Hey guys, so March 17th is coming up, and if you don't know, that's St. Patrick's Day. I don't get many ethnic holidays, so this is kind of a big deal. But it occurs to me, what do we really know about St. Patrick, and why do we celebrate him the way that we do? Picture St. Patrick in your mind. Did you picture this? That's a leprechaun. Alright, we're gonna have to go back to basics. This is a beginner's guide to St. Patrick's Day. Number one, half of what you think you know about St. Patrick is mistaken, and the other half is just flat out wrong. Alright, brace yourself for it. St. Patrick, Ireland's favorite son, is not Irish. He was born in the year 380 something, and the reason we say that is there's very little we actually know about the man himself. But we do know he was born in Britain, probably over here in Glenaventa or maybe Bonaventa. So that means he's British, right? Not really. Okay, back then Britain was actually Britannia. It was a colony of ancient Rome. People don't realize how long ago St. Patrick lived. Chronologically speaking, St. Patrick is 4 times closer to Jesus than he is to us. And St. Patrick lived his life during the fall of the Roman Empire. But being that he was born to well-off parents in the church system, we're gonna call him a Roman. And then it happened. He was kidnapped by Irish marauders and kept as a slave for 6 years. It was while he was in captivity that he became religious. Eventually, by his own account, he said God started to talk to him and tell him how to get home. God told him directions and kind of showed him a little map like it was Grand Theft Auto County Mayo. He led him to a ship probably on the south coast. Eventually, he made his way onto a ship, got back to Britain, where he dedicated himself to religious study. Now, it's also said that St. Patrick brought Christianity to Ireland. Not true either. Okay. St. Patrick eventually says that it's God's calling for him to go back to Ireland and to convert the pagans. This part is true. But Patrick, by that point, probably wasn't even a bishop yet. He was probably a priest that worked for a bishop, and the Catholic Church wasn't going to send a bishop, a high-ranking official, to this wasteland of savages unless there was already some Christians there. But it is true when St. Patrick went back, he was incredibly crucial for the spread of Christianity through Ireland. One of the ways that he did this was to pay off the local kings so that he could go into the villages and start teaching his word to the peasants. Now, St. Patrick himself wasn't entirely liked by the church. Church officials back in Britain saw him kind of as a threat. The people of Ireland liked him way too much, and Patrick refused to accept gifts on behalf of the church. Things really came to a boil when Patrick had the audacity to call out a warlord in Britain called Coroticus. Coroticus, a baptized Christian living in Britain, was going to Ireland, kidnapping people and bringing them back over as slaves. You can see how Patrick would take offense to this. Patrick wrote a very strong written letter to him, and that combined with Patrick's later confessions are the only primary sources we have for the Irish saint. He died and was buried somewhere March 17th, 462. Number 2, everything else you've heard about St. Patrick is medieval fan fiction. See, there's a little thing called hagiography. Hagiography is basically the studying of saints. And in the Middle Ages, that meant making saints into supermen. Let's look at a couple of things that St. Patrick was said to have done. He drove the snakes out of Ireland. Well, fossil records will show you that there were never any snakes in Ireland to begin with. Saying St. Patrick drove snakes out of Ireland is like saying Neil Armstrong drove billy goats off the moon. He used a 3-leaf shamrock to teach the Holy Trinity. That never happened either, and was probably a way for later generations to teach the Trinity through teaching St. Patrick. And his miracles. St. Patrick has some of the coolest and weirdest miracles attributed to him. Some of them include baptizing a rebellious teenage girl who immediately falls dead and then goes to heaven. He allegedly turned Coroticus into a fox. He used his power over weather to destroy pagan property. He killed a guy who had a hill that he wanted and then brought him back to life. That's St. Patrick, such a prankster. At one point he became bioluminescent, and my personal favorite, he invented cats and dogs. No, really. The story says that St. Patrick came across this good man who accidentally married the mother of the devil. Make matters worse, they had 2 children. So St. Patrick banishes the woman, and then he takes pity on the children, turning the daughter into a cat and the son into a dog, and that's why they have so many human-like qualities. Throughout the years, St. Patrick became a more and more important part of the narrative of Ireland, and it's very important to control the narrative. So in the 600s, you had authors like Mirchu and Taichan, both writing their own narratives of St. Patrick on the request of 2 competing bishops. Jocelyn's 1185 Life of St. Patrick was a way to fit St. Patrick into the needs of the new Norman rulers, and by the 1600s, this humble priest had become the Chuck Norris of his day. Number 3, where did St. Patrick's Day come from? Well, St. Patrick's Day had been celebrated as a feast for over 1,000 years. When the rest of Ireland was converting from paganism to Christianity, it worked out really well since it's basically the start of spring. It also worked well as a Catholic holiday. And note there are many Catholic holidays. This is just a partial list of the remaining Catholic holidays this year. But St. Patrick's Day was a midpoint between Lent and Easter. In fact, that kind of led to another thing. Irish cooking. As the story goes, St. Patrick wanted to eat some meat during Lent, and he was called out on this, so he took the meat and he stuck it into a barrel full of water, and when he pulled it back out again, it was a fish. Perfectly fine for him to eat. And they called this the St. Patrick's fish. And it might have started the trend of the Irish boiling every piece of meat that they can find, and hence led to the dubious legacy of Irish cuisine. And soon this religious feast became a nationalistic celebration, and for two countries. First, Ireland. See, for a long time the word shamrock was an English insult to the Irish. It was a derogatory term. One of those words that you're not allowed to say. The S word. But what the Irish did is they took that word and they owned it. They used that word as an act of rebellion, and they had a lot to rebel against. By 1700, 9/10 of all land in Ireland was owned by the English or Scottish. Now, as far as the shamrock being associated with Patrick, that came over 1,000 years after he died. The first recorded association of it is on a coin from Kilkenny in 1685. Mind you, Kilkenny at this point was rebelling against the English. So you could see how Patrick was a symbol of Irish nationalism in Ireland, but it was also a symbol of Irish nationalism in America. During the 1800s, Irish immigration into America was really different. First off, they actually spoke English. Second, there was a pretty even number of males and females coming. They were very young. Only 6% of immigrants would ever go back to Ireland, main reason being because they left to survive. You gotta remember that the Irish potato famine happened mid-century, and the amount of people that eventually left is equal to the population of Ireland at its height. Ireland's still recovering from that mass exodus today. So you have this young population that doesn't quite understand their traditions and is not going home to get more well-versed. Very quickly, St. Patrick's Day starts to lose a lot of its religious meaning and turn into a secular holiday. You have New York's first St. Patrick's Day parade in 1762. George Washington said, "I too am a lover of St. Patrick's Day." St. Patrick's Day in America has become a celebration of successful integration into American society while still keeping your cultural roots. That's why the biggest St. Patrick's Day celebrations in the world are in the US of A. New York, Boston, Philly, Chicago. Yeah, they actually have to do something to turn the river that color. It doesn't always look like that. Surprises me too. And number 4, St. Patty's Day etiquette. When you're writing patties, it's patty double D, not double T. According to the Irish rules, a double T means that his name is Patricia. We may not know much about St. Patrick, but we know he was a he. The national symbol of Ireland is not the shamrock. It is the harp that belonged to the 11th century High King of Ireland, Brian Boru. Where would we get an example of the harp? I swear, this was bought for educational purposes only. The official color of St. Patrick is blue. So why green all over the place? Have you ever seen Ireland? That place is green. Lastly, bagpipes. You're gonna hear... No, wait, no, that's Scotland the Brave. No. Let's do the wearing of the green. Oh yeah, that's the Irish bagpipes. That's much better. It's more melodic, like a bird song. Maybe a penguin? All right, real quick before the parade starts, let's sum it up. Number 1, while originally humble, St. Patrick can now do all the things. Number 2, St. Patrick's Day in America has become a celebration of achievement unlocked, successful integration. And number 3, when they say that everybody is Irish on St. Patty's Day, it's kind of true. All of our forefathers have come from somewhere else. Our ancestors had to work hard to find a place in their society while still keeping their vital culture. Oh, and there's one more tradition I forgot to tell you about. Toasts. See, back in the 1700s, St. Patty's Day was usually celebrated by a breakfast feast. But during that feast, there would be about 40 or 50 toasts, ensuring that you got nothing done with the rest of your day. So make sure that you have a couple of toasts. It doesn't matter what you're drinking as long as you're toasting to something Irish. I am drinking ginger ale in honor of Ireland's 10% redheaded population. Some of my favorite toasts. May your right hand be extended in friendship and never in want. Here's to women's kisses and whiskey amber clear. Not as sweet as a woman's kiss, but a darn sight more sincere. If you're not sure what to toast about, go with the tried and true Ireland forever, Erin go bragh. Be safe and I'll see you next time. Take us out, DJ Penguin!